What if everything we know about our past is a carefully constructed illusion, just the tip of the iceberg, beneath which lies a sunken reality, a vast and complex world erased from the pages of official history? Imagine for a moment a civilization where the skies were filled not with airplanes, but with entire aerial cruise liners, true flying cities. A world where giants lived alongside people of our size, and it wasn't a fairy tale. A world where technology was not just on par with our own, but perhaps even surpassed it. And then, all of it vanished. It dissolved in the flames of mysterious fires that turned stone metropolises to ash, defying all laws of physics, and was replaced by a new, simplified version of reality. At first glance, these seem like a collection of unrelated fantasies: giants, airships, burnt-down cities, and lost knowledge. But what if all these phenomena are links in a single chain? What if they all lead to one common denominator, to an event that split time into a before and an after? The key to this great mystery may be hidden in one specific date: 1776. And to begin unraveling this tangle, we don't need to go on distant expeditions. We just need to raise our heads and look at the world around us. Because the most obvious, and at the same time the most incredible proof of the old world, is its architecture. An architecture that was clearly not built for people of our size. All over the world, there are ancient buildings whose proportions are not just awe-inspiring, but deeply bewildering. Huge doorways reaching 5 or even 6 meters in height. Who were these gates intended for? We, people of modern height, are forced to fit our own small, familiar doors into these giant portals so as not to feel like dwarfs in someone else's house. Massive mirrors hang above fireplaces in old halls, but to look into them, you'd need a ladder. They are placed at a height of 2.5 or even 3 meters. Who would create everyday objects that are physically impossible to use? It's absurd to build a house with a doorknob you can't even reach. This isn't a matter of aesthetics or architectural fashion. It's a matter of basic logic and functionality that official history prefers to ignore. And it's not just limited to buildings. Traces of this civilization are everywhere. Giant books that are impossible for one person to lift. Helmets and swords seemingly made for warriors of legend. Enormous rifles, and even typewriters. These items are not isolated curiosities, but numerous pieces of material evidence for the existence of a race whose physical parameters were drastically different from our own. Discoveries of abnormally tall human skeletons are not a recent invention. Even Peter the Great, in his decree of February 13, 1719, ordered the collection and delivery to the court of human or animal bones, not like those we have now, but exceedingly large or small compared to the ordinary. The history of the 19th century is filled with such finds. However, at a certain point, this evidence began to systematically disappear. Numerous artifacts, as reported in newspapers at the turn of the century, were taken to the Smithsonian Institution, after which all trace of them was lost. There is evidence that tons of bones and unique finds were simply dumped into the ocean. The proof had to be destroyed because, in the new world being built on the ruins of the old one, there was no place for giants. Remnants of their genes may still appear in people of exceptional height we see in sports today, but this is just a faint echo of their former greatness. Ultimately, you have to ask yourself, what makes more sense? A civilization of short people who, for some inexplicable reason, undertook the titanic and pointless labor of erecting disproportionately large cathedrals and palaces? Or a highly advanced civilization of strong, intelligent, and tall people who built magnificent structures to their own scale? And if they possessed such construction capabilities, what technologies did they wield? This question leads us to the next startling part of our lost history. To technologies that seem like science fiction to us today, but were once an everyday reality. The ability to construct such grand structures, proportional to giants, speaks not only of their physical strength, but also of their extremely high level of technological development. Their world was permeated with technologies that are presented to us today as groundbreaking innovations, but are, in fact, merely a pale reflection of a lost greatness. And the most vivid proof of this once soared in the skies. We have been made to forget about a luxurious and elegant mode of travel, a true golden age of aviation that was deliberately erased from history. We're talking about airships. But not the primitive hot air balloons they are commonly depicted as. These were true titans of the sky, aerial cruise liners that surpassed anything we have today in comfort and capability. Contrary to the imposed stereotype of a small, uncomfortable cabin hanging underneath, many airships of the old world allowed passengers to be accommodated within the hull of the giant vessel itself. Inside, there were luxurious restaurants with panoramic windows, bars, spacious ballrooms, and comfortable cabins. This was not just transportation. It was a flying city, capable of carrying not a couple of hundred passengers like a modern airplane, but thousands, along with massive cargo. A journey on such a liner was a beautiful, smooth, and elegant way to travel between continents. Furthermore, this mode of transport was incredibly safe. An airship did not drop like a stone in an emergency. It could glide down gently, and its docking with mooring towers was smooth and precise. And here we come to another mystery hidden in plain sight. Structures like the famous Eiffel Tower, presented to us as a temporary construction for a World's Fair, were actually part of a global transportation network. They were not just city symbols, but functional mooring masts for skyships. Similar towers and spires stood all over the world, connecting major metropolises. Historical facts confirm that airships, including the famous Hindenburg, docked directly at the top of the Empire State Building in the heart of New York City. Imagine the scene. A giant ship silently approaches the spire. A platform extends from its hull, and passengers step out directly into the city center. The same thing happened in Chicago, Los Angeles, and in the largest cities of England and Germany. It was a complex, well-oiled, and incredibly powerful technology. So why did we abandon this marvel? The answer lies in a single event that was designed to sow fear in the consciousness of humanity forever. The Hindenburg disaster was no accident. It was a carefully orchestrated event, an act of information warfare intended to frighten people into believing that airships were flying fire traps. And the goal was achieved. A luxurious and efficient mode of travel was flushed down the drain of history. It's interesting to note that development in this area secretly continues to this day in the US, Russia, China, and European countries, but access to these technologies is closed to the general public. The aerial liners were just the tip of the iceberg of that civilization's technological progress. Old film footage from the 1930s and 40s shows us amazing things. Electric scooters and gyro scooters, cars with automatic parking, and electric trolleybuses running on a wireless network. Think about how absurd that is. They had wireless power transmission for public transport. And then, supposedly, the technology broke down, and we regressed, covering our cities in a web of wires. That is not progress, it is regression. We are slowly being given back, in small doses, technologies that already existed in the past, and each time they are presented as a great invention. They take a technology created for freedom and creativity, turn it on its head, and use it for control and manipulation, while portraying themselves as heroic innovators. Thus, a picture emerges of a highly developed world, inhabited by intelligent and strong people. A world with clean energy, a convenient transport system, and technologies that were a century ahead of our time. But if such an advanced world existed, where did it go? You can't just make people forget flying cities. You can't just hide an entire race of giants and their legacy. To wipe something so massive off the face of the Earth would require a cataclysm of comparable scale. a global purge that had to destroy not only the bearers of knowledge, but also the material traces of their existence. And that cataclysm happened. The technological superiority of the old world was not only its strength, but also the cause of its demise. To erase a civilization of such scale from the face of the earth required not just a conflict, but a total cleansing. A global cataclysm capable of destroying both the keepers of knowledge and their very legacy, captured in stone. And this cataclysm was presented to the world as a series of random tragedies. We are all taught in school the convenient and simple legend of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, supposedly caused by a certain Mrs. O'Leary's cow knocking over a kerosene lantern. This childish tale was meant to explain how one of the largest and most advanced cities of its time burned to the ground. But this is just one. The most famous lie in a series of events that were, in essence, a coordinated program to remake the world. One only needs to delve a little deeper into history to find that Chicago was not an exception. It was part of a firestorm that swept across the planet in the 19th century. City after city, metropolis after metropolis, from Boston and Seattle to Moscow and St. Petersburg, were engulfed in strange and inexplicably destructive fires. Official history tries to convince us that these were cities of wooden slums and matchstick buildings, but that is not true. Surviving evidence clearly shows us exquisite, majestic stone buildings, megalithic structures that for some reason burned as quickly as if they were made of dry wood. Here we encounter a fundamental contradiction that demolishes the entire official version. Stone does not burn. To melt stone or brick, a temperature of over 1100 degrees Celsius is required. A typical building fire barely reaches 550. The entire point of a fireplace, found in every home, is that it is made of brick and stone precisely because these materials do not melt or burn from fire. One would have to be incredibly naive to believe that entire cities of stone and brick could be destroyed to their foundations by ordinary flames. What we see in the documentary records of that time are not just scorched ruins. We see the molten skeletons of buildings, stone turned to slag, brick walls that flowed like wax. These are traces of an impact of colossal energy, incomparable to simple combustion. This leads us to a terrifying but logical hypothesis. Something that can be called an energy weapon was used against the old world. A directed energy blast capable of instantly raising temperatures to thousands of degrees and turning stone into a glass-like mass. This is not science fiction, but a technology whose echoes we may be witnessing even today. Consider the recent fires on the island of Maui, which were called the most deadly in modern history. Many eyewitnesses and researchers noted the strange, selective nature of the destruction. The fire destroyed houses while leaving trees next to them untouched. Certain objects of a specific color remained intact while everything around them turned to ash. There were reports of a strange hum or a blast preceding the chaos. It was a fire that did not behave according to the laws of nature, but according to a set program. What happened on Maui is possibly a demonstration of the same technology used for the global purge in the 19th century. It was the perfect way to erase the traces. After all, such a weapon leaves no fingerprints, no shell casings. There is no one to question. They got rid of inconvenient buildings that could not be fitted into the new history, inventing absurd stories about cows and lanterns. Some structures that could be used later were left standing, but those that were too obvious a testament to past greatness and high technology were destroyed. This was part of a program to reshape the world. Through shock and awe, they forced humanity to accept a new world order. But destroying the cities was only half the battle. This was just the first act of the global reset. After the fires died down, only empty, scorched ruins remained where majestic metropolises once stood. These vast territories needed to be repopulated with new people who would not remember the old world, who would know nothing of giants and flying cities. People for whom a new history could be written from a blank slate. How was this unprecedented operation to reset humanity itself carried out? After the great fires had done their job, only silent, scorched ruins remained where thriving metropolises once stood. The vast cities built by giants were empty. This created a colossal problem for the new masters of the world. The physical space had been cleared, but it needed to be populated. They needed new people, millions of people without a past, without memories of a world of airships and free energy. People for whom a new biography and a new history of civilization could be written from a blank slate. And so, a program of unprecedented scale was launched to erase human memory and repopulate the planet. We find traces of it in the strangest and most inexplicable phenomena of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Look at the world's fairs, which are presented to us as celebrations of technological progress and culture. At these fairs, among other things, utterly shocking exhibits were displayed. Infant incubators. This was not a medical demonstration in the modern sense. Often, they were pavilions where, for a fee, one could view babies, including premature ones. There were entire companies that shipped children by mail, as well as a kind of online business that allowed one to order a child with a certain eye color or other characteristics. At these fairs, you could acquire an Asian, Filipino, or African child. It was a veritable assembly line, supplying human material to populate the empty cities. In parallel, another large-scale program was in operation, the so-called orphan trains. Official history describes this as a charitable effort to place homeless children with families in the Midwest. But looking at the scale, it becomes clear that this was not charity, but a massive logistical operation. Trains carrying thousands of children of unknown origin crossed the country, distributing them to new homes. These children were the ideal candidates for the role of new citizens. They remembered nothing of their parents or the world they were born into. They were a blank slate on which any story could be written. But it was not enough to simply populate the cities with new people. It was necessary to install a new program in their minds, a new operating system for reality. And this mechanism was created and implemented with astounding efficiency. It was during this period that John D. Rockefeller appeared on the scene with his General Education Board. A system of public education was created that quickly encompassed all layers of society. Its stated goal was enlightenment, but its true purpose was entirely different. It was the most massive brainwashing operation in history. The goal of the new educational system was not to teach children to think critically, but to implant in their minds the one and only correct, fabricated version of history. A history in which there was no room for giants, flying cities, or ancient high technologies. A history where all progress began only with the industrial era, and everything before it was the Dark Ages and primitive societies. What could be more effective for deceiving society than instilling the desired worldview in a child's mind from a young age? If people internalize it as the history of their past, they will reproduce it again and again, generation after generation. This forever cuts them off from their true roots and prevents them from moving toward a genuine future. But what happened to those who survived the fiery cataclysm? What happened to the adults who remembered the old world? A different tool of control was prepared for them. In that era, asylums for the insane began to spring up all over the world like mushrooms after rain. Huge, gloomy psychiatric hospitals where any dissenter could be locked away. If a person started talking about remembering giant skeletons, or how his grandfather flew on an airship to another city, he was not listened to. He was declared insane and isolated from society. In this way, the last bearers of true memory were either physically eliminated or discredited, their testimonies turned into the ramblings of madmen. So the puzzle begins to come together. First, the physical destruction of the old world's infrastructure through global fires. Then, the settlement of empty cities with people from nowhere, orphans without a past. And finally, the total ideological conditioning of the new population through a system of compulsory education and the neutralization of remaining witnesses through psychiatry. The reset was complete. A new civilization, with no memory of its origins, was built on the ruins of the old world. We see what happened. The world of giants and high technology was destroyed and replaced by ours. We see how it was done, through cataclysms and the reprogramming of consciousness. But the main question still remains unanswered. Who was behind all this? What power possessed the capabilities and motivation to carry out a plan so monstrous in its design and execution? The answer to this question lies not in the history books, which were rewritten by the victors. It is hidden in an ancient prophecy and encrypted in the symbols of the most famous monument on the planet. The massive purge of the planet, the repopulation of empty metropolises with people without memory, and the total ideological conditioning through a new education system. All these are details of one monstrously conceived plan. We see what was done. A thriving, high-tech world was wiped from the face of the earth. We understand how it was done, through fire, deception, and the reprogramming of consciousness. But until now, the main questions have remained unanswered. Who possessed the power and authority to carry out such a global coup? And most importantly, why? The answer to this question takes us beyond the bounds of conventional history and forces us to turn to sources that are considered not historical, but prophetic. It is encrypted in an ancient text that foretells the final battle for humanity, and immortalized in the stone and copper of the most famous monument on the planet. The 20th chapter of the Book of Revelation describes a pivotal moment in the cosmic drama. After a great battle, an angel descends from heaven, seizes the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan, binds him with a chain, and throws him into the abyss for 1,000 years, so that he could not deceive the nations anymore. During this period, a 1,000-year reign of peace and righteousness is established on earth. But the prophecy does not end there. It says that, after this, he must be set free for a short time. At the end of the 1,000 years, Satan will be released from his prison to go out and deceive the nations once more. Now, let's suppose for a moment that this prophecy is not about a distant future, but about our recent past. What if that 1,000-year reign was, in fact, the lost golden age? A world of harmony, a world of giants and men, a world of free energy and skyliners, an era that was so radically erased from our memory. And if that is the case, then we are living not before, but after this reign. We are living in that very short time, that brief season for which the ancient evil was released from the abyss. And everything we see around us, the lies, the manipulation, the concealment of technology, the rewritten history, is the very deception of the nations that the text warned about. If an event of such universal magnitude occurred, the release of humanity's chief adversary, would it have gone unmarked? The victor in such a cosmic war would not humbly retreat into the shadows. He would erect a monument to his victory, a trophy that would proclaim to the whole world the dawn of his era, his freedom. And that monument stands. Everyone knows it. It is the Statue of Liberty. We are told it is a gift from the French people to the American people, a symbol of friendship and democracy. But let's look closer at its true encrypted symbolism. Its official name is Liberty Enlightening the World. Let's recall that one of Satan's names is Lucifer, which in Latin means light bringer. Biblical texts explicitly warn that the devil can disguise himself as an angel of light to deceive people with his false light, false knowledge, and false freedom. The torch in the statue's hand is not the light of truth, it is the light of Lucifer, enlightening the world with his new order. And now, let's look at her feet. There, at the base of the statue, lie broken chains. The official version says this symbolizes liberation from slavery and tyranny. But in the context of the prophecy, this symbol takes on a much more sinister meaning. It is a literal illustration of release from the abyss. These are the broken chains that bound the ancient serpent for 1,000 years. The statue celebrates not the freedom of humanity, but the freedom of its jailer. Who were the creators of this monument? The sculptor, Auguste Bartholdi, like many others involved in the project, were high-ranking members of Masonic lodges. A Masonic plaque is set on the cornerstone of the statue's pedestal, stating that it was laid by the Grand Master of Masons of the state of New York. In the esoteric teachings that permeate higher Masonic philosophy, Lucifer is often seen not as absolute evil, but as the bearer of forbidden knowledge and the liberator of humanity from ignorance. For them, enlightening the world has a very specific meaning. Moreover, the statue's appearance bears a striking resemblance to certain classic works of art on the same theme. Consider the painting by Thomas Stothard, Satan Summoning His Legions. The pose, the crown of rays, the overall commanding presence. The similarity is obvious. Or look at John Martin's painting Pandemonium, depicting the capital of hell. Here too, we see motifs that were later embodied in the New York monument. These are not random coincidences, but links in a single iconographic chain. So, it all comes together. The name alluding to Lucifer, the torch of false light, the broken chains symbolizing the end of confinement, the Masonic creators who imbued it with their sacred meaning. If the Statue of Liberty is indeed a monument celebrating the release of Satan and the beginning of his short season of rule on Earth, then the date she holds in her hands ceases to be just the date of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It becomes a starting point, the 0 hour of a new era. And this allows us not only to understand when this period of deception began, but also to make a frighteningly precise prediction about when it might end. If the Statue of Liberty is not a symbol of hope, but a monumental trophy proclaiming the release of an ancient evil, then it is not just a monument, but a giant cosmic clock. And the date inscribed on the tablet in her hand is not just a historical reference. It is a starting point. The 0 hour of a new era. Launched at midnight on July 4, 1776. It is from this date that the countdown of that short time allotted for the deception of the nations begins. But what is its duration? The prophecy gives us a clue. The author uses a term that in some translations sounds like a short season. And what is a season? In our usual understanding, a season is 1/4 of a whole year. It is logical to assume that this principle holds true on a cosmic scale as well. If the full reign lasted 1,000 years, then a short season should be a quarter of that period. Now, let's do a simple but chilling calculation. 1,000 years divided by 4 gives us 250 years. This is the duration of that short time for which the ancient serpent was released from the abyss. Now, let's take the starting date inscribed on the monument of his release, 1776, and let's add the duration of his reign to it, 1776 plus 250. The result is 2026. All of our history as we know it fits into this short span of time. Now everything falls into place. The destruction of the old world, which we tentatively call Tartaria, was not an event of ancient history. It was the first and foremost task of the new power that came into its own at the end of the 18th century. It was necessary to erase all memories of the previous 1,000-year reign, to destroy its bearers, its technologies, and its architecture. The great fires of the 19th century were no accident, but a deliberate scorched earth policy, clearing the territory before new construction. Then came the second stage, the creation of a new humanity. Programs like the orphan trains and the infant incubator assembly lines were not a humanitarian mission, but a project to populate empty cities with people without roots or memory. And the system of universal public education created during the same period became the perfect tool for programming a new, fabricated matrix of reality into their minds. All dissenters, all who still remembered the truth, were isolated in psychiatric hospitals, their testimonies dismissed as the ramblings of madmen. Millions of followers of the new power, be they entertainment stars, politicians, or oligarchs, took up key positions in this new system, built on the ruins of the old world. All of this is not a chaotic series of events, but a clearly executed plan, launched in 1776. And if this calculation is correct, then we are living in the most unique and most dangerous of times. We are the generation standing on the threshold of the end of this short season. The allotted time is running out. The cosmic lease expires in 2026. All the chaos, all the tension, all the insane events we are witnessing in the world today may not be mere coincidence, but the agony of a system, the death throes of a power that knows its time is up. This is its last, desperate attempt to maintain control and drag as many souls as possible into the abyss with it. This theory is not just a collection of facts. It is a lens through which all of our known history and current events suddenly fall into a single, logical, and terrifying picture. It explains why our world is full of lies, why technologies are hidden from us, why we have lost connection with our true past. We are living in the final scenes of a grand drama. The countdown has begun. And the main question everyone must ask themselves is, if this theory is correct, and his reign has only a year left, what happens next? And that is all for today. Until next time.